Can't even drive the company truck 12 feet on the weekend? Okay. This is my husband's story from a few years ago. He was an equipment salesman and had a company pickup that he brought home at night and on weekends. His company did not allow personal use aside from driving it to and from work. Some salesmen took advantage of having a pickup and did use it for personal use, and the company installed GPS systems on all company vehicles at the first of the year. My husband was pretty miffed as he really hadn't misused his truck. But he figured he had nothing to hide. So he shrugged it off. In February, he had to attend a trade show on a Saturday. This triggered the GPS and he got a nasty call from his boss who was located in another state. My husband had to provide documentation that he was attending a company-sanctioned event. He felt like he was being babysat. This happened a couple other times as well. One Saturday that spring, he backed the truck out of the garage and onto the driveway to get the lawnmower out. After he finished mowing, he pulled it back into the garage. Yup. You guessed it. This triggered the GPS twice, and on Monday, his boss called him and chewed him out. My husband tried to explain, but Lou was mad. You know you are not to drive the company truck on the weekend. Quote, I was moving it out of the garage so I could get my mower out. Does your report show how far each trip was? Quote, they were 0.0025 miles each. He paused as he seemed to realize how short of a distance these trips were. But, well, that doesn't matter. No driving after hours or on the weekends. This is being noted in your file. Quote, so on the weekends he either parked on the street or in the driveway. A few weeks later, his compliance became malicious. We lived in the Midwest where thunderstorms, tornadoes, and hailstorms are not uncommon. We were under a storm advisory with a strong probability of hail. Should you move your truck into the garage? I asked my husband. You'd think so. But today is a Sunday and I am forbidden from driving my truck even a few feet. So it's going to stay where it is, he said. As the hail came down, about the size of a quarter, he stood looking out the window at the truck grinning. He loved explaining the damage to his boss and reminding him why the truck was no longer parked in a nice, safe garage. Edited to add. When he reported the damage, he reminded his boss that it was a shame he wasn't allowed to move the truck into his garage when he became aware that a storm was coming. The boss knew damn well he had maliciously followed the policy. The policy was relaxed, reworded a few weeks later. Not sure if it was a direct result of this. Yay. I used to hate those stupid GPS emails. Once a week it seems I'd have to explain to the regional manager that my guy was stopped at a red light for 5 minutes. He wasn't just idling the truck for no reason. I did use it once to prove my guy wasn't at the customer's house when it was broken into, but that's the only time it ever came to good use. Years ago at a former employer we were told to bring our trucks to the shop. They'd decided to go Big Brother on and put GPS on our trucks. There were 6 of us altogether and most objected strenuously. This is when we still at least had the illusion of privacy. The boss swore up and down he didn't have access to the data. It was supposedly just for insurance and theft recovery stuff. Nobody really believed him and lots of snarky comments were made, but things did settle down. Eventually, about 6 weeks in, he called up a coworker of mine to chew him out for still being at home several hours after he should have left home, rather than argue with the boss. He said there was someone there who would like to have a word with him. Then he handed the phone to one of our bigger customers whose site was about 80 miles from the guy's house. After a bit of confusion, the customer confirmed that our guy was there and had been there all morning. Boss outed himself as a liar and still never apologized. If you think we rode him hard about it before. Coworker never would admit it, but I suspect he somehow engineered the situation. Apparently the GPS in mine never worked right at my house anyway. That's not surprising. The carrier the company used for everything had next to no coverage at my house. I also parked it under a metal roof. At the time, the GPS receiver, an old Motorola phone with no service, that I used for my laptop, wouldn't work under there. No idea if that did anything or not, but I like to think it did. The GPS thing lasted for only a few months before they told us to take part of it out and drop them off at the shop. Not long after, we were finally issued company cell phones that they swore totally did not have GPS on them. They did. But that's a story for another day though. Unfortunately, you know a company doesn't trust you when they have intense GPS monitoring. Our GPS monitors would notify the boss when you were speeding. We had little hatchbacks, not really capable of doing more than about 160 kmph at a push. I got a call one day. Boss, GPS says you're doing 190 kmph, me. Well, that's not even possible. Do you think this call is even necessary, boss? Yeah, true. I was a mobile IT service engineer for a while. And although it was before GPS, our mileage was monitored. Unfortunately, one of the techs abused their car for personal use, and from then on we weren't allowed to use the car on our own time at all. After getting angrily interrogated about some excess mileage over a weekend, there were major roadworks and my trip to from home increased by about 5 miles. I decided that the car could just stay at head office from then on. I'd drive to the office, pick up the car and then start work, leaving it there at the end of the day. Management were pissed as they could no longer get me to go straight to a job in the morning. But there was nothing in my contract stating I had to take the car home with me. What did the boss say about the dimples on the truck? I just love the mental picture of your husband watching that hail of WEL hail, and enjoying his mug of warm beverage and saying, "What a shame. What a shame." Did you pick Lou as a name for the sometimes grumpy and quick to reaction Lou Grant, open mouth smile? Great story. So glad he did that. I worked as a regional manager for a retail company and they put GPS in our cars. They would also track our laptop usage and could see if we were logged in to main server from a store or another IP address. Some time ago, a bar was opened next to my office store. I could get the store Wi-Fi sitting at the bar and my car GPS would show I was in the store parking lot. I knew the bartender better than the folks in the store. Oh, I can't mow my lawn? I can't shelter your truck. Let's make a deal. I would have had you, the wife, pick me up from work and park my work truck behind Lou's car, trapping him in for the weekend. I always wondered why we switched fleet management companies practically overnight where I used to work. It was a weird thing to just change. Then the only difference seemed to be was you can now get a car wash on the fuel cards. Turns out it was for the GPS tracking. They were using it as evidence to fire a sales representative who was basically not even working at all. He drove all over the North Island during work times, heading up the coast to be with his GF on work time. I am not talking about cutting off early on a Friday. I am talking about leaving at midday and traveling 2h out of your working region, which was pretty broad anyway. His wife with 3 kids under 5 at home had no idea. So not only did this guy get his ass fired for gross misconduct but lost the house, wife and kids. My neighbor had a son-in-law that was a real prince. Anyway, one day the neighbor comes home and finds his son-in-law has driven across the lawn and parked his Trans Am in the side yard. His wife lets him know that someone had tried to steal it. So son-in-law wanted it somewhere away from prying eyes. A couple weeks pass, and the side yard is getting shaggy. So he calls the son-in-law to get it moved to the garage. Son-in-law: "There's a reason I didn't leave you keys, old man. And that's because I don't want you fucking touching it." A couple more weeks go by and there's a storm brewing. Neighbor knows from experience that any big wind is going to cause the black walnut trees to drop their fruit, and that most of it is going to end up on the Trans Am. So he calls the son-in-law again, telling him the car isn't going to be safe there, and is promptly told to mind his own business. By the time the storm finished, the car had lost both a window and the windshield and acquired a dozen baseball-sized dents. And my neighbor left it that way, without informing the son-in-law, for another month. Not his business, after all. Buy that man a beer. Fuck company GPS. I had it on my work vehicle too, and I caught shit for moving it out of the driveway one night. And then the thing started acting up and failing, so I got blamed for tampering with it so I could drive it on the weekend. It's a fucking panel van full of tools and parts. What am I driving it to go get ice cream? Don't miss that problem. We lived in the Midwest where thunderstorms, tornadoes, and hailstorms are not uncommon. From Oklahoma. Know what you're talking about. Can't believe the supervisor was like that, especially how crazy and downright destructive weather can be in that area. I would have thought he would have insisted on keeping the truck in the garage as much as possible, and just used common sense about GPS registering backing out neighborhood moves when needed. Just shows an extreme lack of common sense. To quote, "Oh brother, where art thou? Your husband's supervisor sounds like he's dumber than a bag of hammers." It was absolutely a direct result of this law. The piece of shit manager at my last warehouse job had impact sensors installed on forklifts. When a certain threshold of force was met, it would disable the forklift and require a manager to come out to investigate and re-enable it. Pretty soon they became more than impact sensors. They started being treated like driving into trailers too hard sensors. Utter stupidity and needless stress and wasted time from people who didn't ever drive forklifts. Putting "not to be reposted or printed elsewhere" is going to stop anyone. LMAO. You put it on the internet. I'd park it where it would get ticketed on the weekend for street cleaning. Not to be reposted or printed elsewhere. Okay, that's not gonna work at all.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.